Do you know that by 2050, 1 in 5 of us will be a senior citizen? That is 347 million senior citizens in the next 25 years. How prepared are we?
No, we are not really. But are we mentally preparing ourselves for such a shift, and is the machinery working towards it? I would say yes.
What do you think are the most pressing challenges that senior citizens face currently in India?
I think it always starts with financial security for them.
Elder abuse by your own family members. Now, the numbers are 35% of senior citizens facing abuse from their sons and 21% from daughters-in-law. And this is just, I'm sure it could be even more.
He asked us, everything will get over by then and all that. And we were like, look, we don't know. It so happened the next day this lady passed away. And he was constantly checking on, is she okay? Is she alive? Is she alive? This is exactly the word.
Our guest today is Rajinish Menon, founder and CEO of Sukino Healthcare Solutions. Hello and welcome to What India Needs podcast with me, Shutapa Paul. Through this podcast, we hope to throw light on various issues that need to be resolved for us to be a stronger nation and perhaps even better citizens. Do you know that by 2050, 1 in 5 of us will be a senior citizen? That is 347 million senior citizens in the next 25 years. How prepared are we? Our guest today is Rajinish Menon, founder and CEO of Sukino Healthcare Solutions, and he brings with him a unique perspective and experience into India's silver population. Thank you for joining us, Rajinish, on What India Needs podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Shutapa, for having me here.
So, my first question is, do you think we as a nation are prepared for this massive demographic shift which is coming up?
Well, India is a quick learning country. And we have definitely understood the problems that is going to be faced by the elders. And these problems can be seen in a couple of compartments, if you will. One is the expectations of the elders, especially from what they see from their counterparts, if you will, who are in developed countries. And mind you, the elders of today and tomorrow are people who have seen the better of India, the 80s, 90s, 2000s and all that. And these people really know what progress is and progress was and is progress around the world.
Right.
Okay, so as a country, where we are we completely ready to handle their expectations? No, definitely not. I don't think so. But are we gearing up to handle this kind of a growth? I mean, it's interesting. You're going to have about 40% decadal growth in elders. If you take it as a personal population, you will have about almost 22% of the India's population in the elderly state by about 2040, which is not too far away when you look at it, really. And incidentally, one of the reports also says that the number of people who are more than 80 years old will equal to the numbers of 0 to 15 years old.
Right.
Okay, so that's a huge amount of demographic shift. So are we ready? No, we are not ready. But are we mentally preparing ourselves for such a shift, and is the machinery working towards it? I would say yes. I mean, to be fair, the government, with whatever little bit means it has got and with little bit of focus that it has got, I'm very sure that the government will continue to focus very heavily on that sector. A lot of private players are playing a very active role in promoting, good health among elders. You see a lot of players around it. You find a lot of CSR activities coming from the corporates on that front, which is a very important element because those are the big churners, right? I mean, India is always a following country. You find something great happening in the India side of it or the Bharat side of it, you will find the other side picking it up very fast. And in this case, if the corporates do a good job in the cities, then you will find it replicated in the tier 2 and tier 3 parts of India, of the country. So yes, we are getting ready for it. But if you ask me right now, are we ready for such a massive explosive growth that we are going to see in that numbers? No, we are not. But
Right.
hoping for the best always.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, of course, to be prepared for tomorrow, we need to solve a lot of issues which are there today. So in your mind, what do you think are the most pressing challenges that senior citizens face currently in India?
I think it always starts with financial security for them. I do not know if the elders of tomorrow have saved enough And this especially to be seen in the context of, an aspiration that they have, right? I mean, when at that age, they will be looking to consume a lot of things. And at that point in time, if they're not able to consume, and mind you, when I say consume, I don't mean only about material consumption.
Right.
It can also be about their own healthcare needs, right? It's their own physical needs, for lack of a better word. Their nest, So to that extent, if you see, the problems and the issues starts from there.
Right.
Have they prepared themselves for this kind of a phenomena, right? So one of the key obstacles is the financial security, and if they have maintained for it, and if they have saved for it, well and good. Otherwise, that is going to create a whole lot of tension in the society, because when you don't have, you're always worrying about the future. And India is not the India of, that you had about 10-20 years back, where you had a family system. You still gave a lot of things to your family. Today, I can't blame anybody, but it's just that it's become too nuclearized. People have their own issues to resolve with, and to that extent, elders are feeling a pinch of being left out. Okay, so financial security is definitely one of those things. Secondly, as a country, are we as a society accepting elders? Right. I
Right.
mean, do we have infrastructures suited for the elders? I mean, with due respect, I know the government is trying to do a lot of things, but still, look at the bus stands. Look at the parks out here. I mean, Bangalore is one of those very few lucky cities, if you will, where you have good parks for people to sit down and enjoy and spend a joyful evening amongst the greeneries. But how many other tier one cities can even boast of it, right? So physical infrastructure of these things are still a way away. Even trains, even buses.
Yeah.
For them to just get in and get out. The accessibility is still a challenge. So
Yeah.
that's the second aspect of it. The third aspect is the infrastructure, the healthcare infrastructure available to kind of take care of them. I mean, most of them need not always be hospitalized, right? But at the same time, is there a facility where they can go and get themselves proactively checked, so that their future things can be taken care immediately and not really wait for things to die, to go to the hell rot. So these are some of the few areas, if you ask me, where the elders are concerned at this point in time, and these are some of the obstacles, I think, which we all should work to remove
Right.
it.
I think it's very interesting you mentioned about bus, transportation, for example, the
Absolutely.
simplest thing. I think one country which has done a lot for elders, and I think it's also because they have that many elders, is Japan.
Yeah.
As simple as making those, platforms where you don't have to jump, step up. You're just
Absolutely.
able to go in. I mean, a lot of good lessons from Japan to
Oh,
learn.
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the whole society is so accommodative over there. I mean, you get into a lift, there is a certain protocol that they follow where the elders are always given way. I mean, it's not that we didn't have all this. If you see again, I'm not trying to, sound, too ancient over here, but if you see, our own society also was a society which always respected elders. Not that they don't do it anymore here, but there's just the problem is that India has always been a chaotic place in a good sense, but the chaotism gets a little bit more tougher, for not for people like us at this age, but then people are elders. So that is something as a society we should be able to take care of, and that to that extent, Japan is a very very calm society, very understanding society, and very accommodative society.
And so when I was reading up about Japan and how they are accommodating their elders, they are allowing them to thrive as well. It's not that you've retired and you're kept in the corner of a room. They're encouraging them to have an active life, work if they can as much as possible, and also even the small things like walking sticks, a place to keep a walking stick when you're going in.
Absolutely.
They're thinking about this whole community, so we have to also think
Totally.
in that way.
Totally. I mean, it's very interesting that you brought this point up about them being walking, right? I mean, nothing can kill an elderly person faster than making him to sit at some place just because he's crossed the 60 years of age. I mean, today 60 is nothing. We all have are grown up thinking that 60 is retirement age, but 60 is an age to just get started, if you will. So
Yeah.
I think people should start believing that elders with all their experiences that they have, yes, they might have been physically a bit more weaker than what they were in their prime, but then the experience that they bring to the table is something that one should always. So large opportunities, and I'm very optimistic over here, Shutapa. I still feel that with the growth that the Indian economy is seeing, the growth of labor participation currently in the Indian economy, the need for the Indian labor, and when I said lack of labor, I'm not talking about just the lowest class, but I'm talking about the low, mid, higher. That kind of a demand that you see world over because of the population decline, you'll find India is in perpetual need for good hands, right? And to that extent, I still feel that even if you cross 60, I think safe to say if you're healthy, 65, 70, you'll end up doing something over in India, and I think that opportunity exists over here. Now, as far as society is concerned, yes, we all should make an effort to ensure that these people are given that opportunity even at that
Right.
age.
Right.
That is one. Secondly, now you brought that point about where the walking sticks are placed and all that. That's very nice. That's very true. I think it's high time that we even build our own buildings and residential complexes which can accommodate even a senior person staying, right? I mean, if you see the typical height of a staircase, it's not 5 inches or 6 inches anymore. It's some are 7, some are 8, so it's very uneven. Now the problem with the elders is that they will not be able to keep all steps uniformly,
Right.
right? I mean, they'd love to, but they cannot. And in that situation, if you don't have a uniform height and steps, just imagine what's going to happen. Somebody's going to break their back. So you're right. I mean, as a society, I think we owe it to them. We owe it to them.
And this, the power of wisdom. I mean, of course, we now have a few networks which are trying to bring seniors back into the workforce.
Yeah.
I personally think there's so much to learn from experienced people who've done it already, and they can teach in many ways, but somehow acceptance, interest is less.
Yeah, I mean, we have this. Some of us, I mean, have this very condescending attitude, and that we ourselves have probably said that at some time, and we don't probably realize that we have said that. We say that, "Papa, आपको कुछ मालूम नहीं है." My own son takes my phone and tells me and shows me a few new stuff on the phone, a new app on the phone, and he thinks that I'm a complete dimwit when it comes to handling a phone. Although he's just 10 years old, but see that kind of a slight attitude comes into younger
Right.
people. They start thinking that, oh, this guy, he may not be able to do it, but in reality, believe me, these guys have done it, been there, and we have to just believe in them. Of course, give them some time as well. See, don't expect their mind to be ultra fast like an young mind would in current situations, where especially with the multi screens and multitasking that we are all used to, don't expect an elderly person to immediately come and toggle between screens. I mean, that may not
Right.
be possible, may or may not be possible, but one has to be accommodative of that. But surely the wisdom that they carry in solving problems, I think you will need a good thinking person and a wiser person in any room.
Yeah.
And I think the boardrooms and to the discussion rooms and conference rooms, I mean, best to have somebody.
I think startups, especially, would immensely benefit from
Totally.
senior, wise people being part of their boardroom.
Totally. I mean, you name it. I mean, if I have to just look into my own company, and I've been fortunate to have people of slightly more aged, about 60 years, working with us. Of course, since we run a healthcare facility, we have doctors who don that role, who have done active employment in hospitals, and now looking at scaling down their activity a little bit lower. But the experience that they bring to the table, they have seen almost all kinds of ailments.
Right.
They have seen all sorts of emotions, between the patient and the patient family, so they're able to counsel them better. See, our own doctors who tend to immediately, the young doctors who tend to immediately start advising and prescribing, loads of medications. I've seen them cut down. Nothing is going to happen. Don't get into panic mode. So it is very important to have such saner minds amongst us as well. And we as a company, as Sukino has always benefited from them. And when you talk of startups, I think in general, yes, most startups today would need that kind of a thing. Otherwise,
Right.
not to kind of demean anybody's contribution. I mean, especially the younger crowd's contribution, but a 25-year-old startup, founder can do a lot for himself by having some sane minds in the room, and
Absolutely.
need not be always 70, 80 years old. I mean, you
Yeah.
can start having with people at 60 who's just gone away from their active employment and who wants to get into consulting role. Those are some of the places in which they can.
Absolutely. With our current senior citizens, one big issue is the feeling of isolation and loneliness. And of course, there is one, again, I come back to startups since, one does work with them.
Yeah.
Goodfellows, like a startup like that, wherein, which is backed by Ratan Tata, they kind of provide grandkids
Yes,
like
absolutely.
companionship.
Yeah.
What more do you think we can do? Again, we are a busy society, and I completely understand that. And pot calling the kettle black. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't even expect people to leave work and sit
Yeah.
sometimes at home. It's not possible.
Correct.
It's not practical. What do we do to make our seniors feel more included, less isolated, especially those who are staying away from family, for example, kids?
Yeah.
Kids are away.
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. You talked about we're all busy, and not to sound more like pun intended or something, but then we tend to spend a lot of time doing things which we can actually avoid if we are a little bit more organized, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
the time it takes. I mean, in Bangalore, there's always this saying that you don't talk about the distance in kilometers, but you talk about the time that you need to spend, right? I mean, it's about for 1 hour from here to there. That's how we kind of describe
Yeah.
it. Now, actually, why is it 1 hour? Because if you go to the roads, you will find that everybody's jostling to come and be the first, and thereby causing a massive jam and disruption. So
Right.
we're busy. We're busy on the road, but doing what? Right? I mean, you
Right.
get the drift. That's what I'm trying to say.
Right.
This is exactly the truth in the case of society as well. We need not be as busy as we are now. Coming down to your question on the elders, a lot of meaningful contributions can be done by them, right? I mean, we need not always wait for the government to do anything, right? I mean, we think that government should set up parks, the government should do that, government should do this, but then you know what? These are governments which are elected by us, right? I mean, for the last 75 years, if there's anybody to be blamed, I think you need to point the finger. I mean, you need to look at the
Absolutely.
mirror, and then you need to ask this question to yourself.
We get
Did
the
you do the
leaders
right thing?
we
You get the
vote
leaders.
for.
I mean,
Correct.
so my point to the now coming to the elders is that yes, there's a lot of feeling of isolation among elders, especially because almost all the children, I mean, are working, if not in the same city or town, but they're working elsewhere. If they're working in the same city or town, God forbid, if they're in one part of Bangalore and the family is in other part of the Bangalore, meeting every day, impossible. I'm very sure that most of them would have taken one house over the elders over there and meet them over the weekend and all that, which means your tension, your elder tension, that the way their mind goes through every day, the blanketness in their minds and on their faces is only going to increase, right? So now it's not all despair, and this is where community has to play a big role. When I say community, I mean you can have after weekend parties for them. When I say parties, I don't mean party, but I'm talking about them for a get
Get-togethers
together. You can have park get-togethers over there. There are a lot of institutions which have come together for senior living, right? And those are people who are conducting a multitude of activities for them over the weekend. But elders also should start now exploring.
Like my mother is a recluse.
Most times I
I can't
always
get her out of the house at
exactly.
all.
Most people also are people who are not really sitting out. That's also a danger from the elders' perspective. So they also have to explore. I mean, you look into Bangalore, the Bangalore Times page, especially for the Bangalore activity itself. If you go to that page 4, I think, and it contains a plethora of activities that Bangalore conducts at any point in time, especially over the weekends. Now, these are things which elders. The reason why I'm saying that is when you start meeting people, you get ideas, you get two things more done. Third time again you meet, you'll get something. So you need to start meeting people as well. One of the reasons why our politicians continue to stay young is because they meet new people every day.
Yeah.
They keep talking so much. The brain is active. their voice box is always active, their eyes are always active at looking at people. This is what going to make people young. This
Yeah.
is the secret of any politician, if you ask me.
Yeah.
And our elders should simply follow this kind of a banal act as well.
Absolutely. I think that's a very valid point. If you keep yourself active, either you're working or you're socially doing something,
Absolutely.
you stay sharper longer.
You stay sharper and you stay younger at mind as well. You start accommodative, you start thinking about another's viewpoint even in a better, more broader manner. And that's the best way to go about it.
Something else that obviously stands out a lot is crimes against senior citizens.
Yeah.
We see there's a growing percentage
Yeah.
of crimes, whether it is physical, whether it is mental, whether it is cyber crime. I mean, that is
Huge.
shocking,
Yeah.
the numbers now. And then, you have a study like HelpAge, which is saying elder abuse by your own family members. Now, the numbers are 35% of senior citizens facing abuse from their sons,
Yeah.
and 21% from daughters-in-law. And this is just, I'm sure it could be even more. It's so tough to protect them from any kind of crimes and abuse.
Yeah, if you have seen my face, I was frowning when you were telling me all this because it's a very stark reality. And the company that I run, Sukino Healthcare, I've seen enough number of such situations where I've come across, the families talking to me about it, the elders talking to me in private about it. Now, you know what? This problem is not going to go away. You can't just wish it away, Shutapa. With deepfakes coming in, right? I mean, I have been conned multiple times, or rather, in my name or on my name. A lot of people have got emails saying that I'm in distress. Can you send this money across to me? And they called and asked me, "Are you really in distress? Do you need something?" Now, imagine if a parent is going to, if an elderly is going to get a call, video call about his son crying and asking for money. The guy is just going to transfer the money, right? Nobody,
Yeah,
and that,
absolutely.
and the other person is not a real guy; it's a deep fake,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
just imagine how technology today, people do not know some of the messages that come in, like for example Amazon. You may actually see carefully the O is missing and it's just ZN, and you start clicking on that because it
We
looks
fall
so.
prey to it and have been
um,
IT personnel have fallen prey to
Everybody,
it.
even police people are fallen to it.
Yeah.
We see every day, every day in the newspaper we see this kind of police commissioner has fallen to this kind of a deceit. So now you can imagine an elderly person with a failing, God forbid, but with a failing eyesight or with a failing memory or with a thing, suddenly he sees this, he's going to jump into it. So the only way, and this is the thing, the only way to avoid such kind of a traps or falling into such traps is their own awareness that what, we are living in a real Kalyug. Not to sound philosophical, but we are living in a
True,
Kalyug,
true.
and we have to safeguard. No, these days age doesn't matter. You're talking about financial issues, rather the conning in the financial space. But I can tell you physical harm, right? Even an elderly above 60-year-old are not safe today, right? That's an unfortunate situation.
Women,
Now, women, I'm talking
senior
about
citizens. I
exactly
mean, we've heard
above
of
60
rape
years,
cases
they're
and all.
raped. Yeah.
It's
So the
crazy.
point is, you have to be aware that we are not living in one of those, golden societies where everything is going to be taken care of, and everybody who comes to help you are always coming with a very good intention. I think somewhere down the line, you need to be cultivating that kind of a safeguard mechanism within yourself. A. B is, be aware of technology. I know my own mom used to give the phone to me and say, just see what's written over there, because she doesn't want to spend the time, and that's the trust she has in me. Now that is great. I'm a son and she can do that to me, but it so happens she can give it to her niece or
Anyone else.
anybody,
Yeah.
even their domestic worker. And if there's some money on the table, you're just encouraging some bad behavior. I'm not saying he's going to do that. I'm just saying you're opening a door for a bad behavior, a potential bad behavior, right? Why do that?
You have to be very aware.
Very aware. Okay, so be technologically aware a little bit of things. And thirdly, I'm not never tired of saying this, elderly shouldn't feel that they are elders. They should be having that I'm the mindset of an young guy, and they should keep themselves fit. There's no reason why 60 and above you need to have a paunch and you need to be drooling around. You do not. I mean, you can still go around to the gym. There are enough healthy senior gyms available. Not that other gyms will not take you, but then you need to go and make yourself more fitter. I'll tell you
Dignity
why.
in aging.
That's correct. Dignity in aging. Now, I'll tell you why you need to be physically fitter. Because when you're physically fitter, you're mentally alert. Right? Physically, if you're not fit, if you have ailments, then you're going to be dogged on by it mentally. And that means that a whole lot of issues are going to come back. You're going to be an easy prey.
True.
You're going to be an easy prey, right? So, this is where it's very important for elders to take care of. Yeah.
You know, elder abuse, which I touched upon. I mean, we also hear stories where, there are complaints being made to the police station, but the cops haven't taken
Yeah.
action. You also mentioned that because of the company that you run, you've also come across cases which are bordering and shocking.
Yeah.
Would you care
Yeah.
to share
Yeah,
some
yeah, yeah,
instance?
yeah. I can. I mean, you're right. I mean, these are easy push-overs, right? For us elders, are easy push-overs. And now imagine, with deep respects to the police department. I mean, if you've been to a police station for whatever, maybe you would have gone for a passport verification. You would have seen those guys are really, really always stressed out. If you ask me, any force or other any department in this country, which or rather possibly in every country, I think, which are really maxed out psychologically and stressed out, it's a police department. So can't completely blame them. It's not that their attitude they want to do it. It's just that they're too stressed out. Now coming down to elderly, they're an easy push-out target. And the push-out unfortunately can also happen internally, Shutapa. And I'm telling you from my personal experiences, I have seen enough number of kids um, who just want to admit their dad and mom with a clear intention of getting them away. And I'm using this word getting them away in the very negative connotation to say that I wish they went away. Not
Passed
that
away.
something is wrong with them. Not that something is wrong with them. But it's just that they may be emotionally too leaning on the children, on that particular person, or it might have been financially you need to be spending a bit more on their needs, and then you start comparing and how much of money I'm trying to make in this. See, living in India, unless you have a fantastic compensation, it's not going to be easy, right? I mean, so most people with not so good compensation suddenly fall prey to this thinking that what is it really needed? I mean, I always take this example, like, if you're buying a shirt for your kid, you'll buy the best of the brands. But if you're buying it for your dad and mom, it's the 300, 400 rupees one, and you yourself will come up with that thinking, no, no, he doesn't want it. He just goes by the whites. I mean, he's just very comfortable in that. He doesn't like me spending money. You get into that mode. I have seen multiple situations where people who have got admitted into my center talk to me in private that what a glorious life they had earlier. Right? I mean, the kind of when I talk about glorious life, they're talking about those nice colorful shirts they wore, those parties they wore, the kind of shoes they were always wearing, and there are people, I can tell you, who have told me that they just dislike wearing sandals, and those are people who have been in the corporate life for far too long, wearing only shoes and all that, and suddenly now the shoes gone, and now they have to wear chappals
Forced by their
in
kids,
the
basically.
well, yeah, I mean, with I don't want to say that it's forced by the kids, but it's forced by circumstances which is not financial in nature. So that means you understand where the push is going to come from. And even if it is a shoe, it's one of those low ranking. I have had people who come and cry to me and say, but then you know what, they still try to sound happy. They said, okay, fine, I mean, that's it, I mean, I'm still okay, and they start comparing with another elder who's in a slightly more
Worse off.
worse position, and then they feel better. Okay, at least I have this. So
That's so sad.
I can tell you multiple examples of people, I mean, it's not gloom, all gloom, Sritapa. I mean, there are a lot of people who are really happy as well. So, it's a mix of both.
Right.
All I'm saying is, don't think everything is very smooth and easy and nice and plumb. You also have the other side of things, and especially the other side of things are of people who have been in extremely well-off positions earlier, extremely well-off positions. These are people who were directors in companies. These are people who were chartered accountants. I mean, to my own, people whom I know in my field, who had glorious lives as the CFOs of very large companies, and who unfortunately don't have a pension, but they have saved little bit, not much, and the saving has been spent on the children to study abroad, and now they're all alone. So yeah, it's a mix.
It's a mix. You didn't touch upon that one story that you told me, which had me shocked the other day when we were discussing about when it's almost end of life for a senior citizen. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, I can, in fact, because I fondly I remember that that particular situations, because it was just the second day of us starting, my center. I run this transition care center or the continuum care center. Sukino is known for that. It's an out of hospital care for people who suffer from chronic ailments. Now, on the very second day, I had this lady, a very sick lady, more coming to us for palliation. And since this was the second day, we were very eager to take patients, because we wanted to kind of see how it goes and what is to be done. And we admitted her in our center, and the son was very eager that the mom gets admitted over here, because it's not a hospital. And uh, what we do is a place for people to come and stay to recuperate and rehabilitate, as you know. But it is also leading to palliation in case of extreme chronic ailment, and where the diseases cannot be, solved for whatever reason it may be. So this gentleman, admitted his mom. He wanted her to stay well off and stay in a nice place with all doctors and nurses and everybody around him, which is what we do. But when we admitted, we realized that the lady is in a really bad condition. It's not palliation anymore; it is rather hospice, and it's a matter of a day or two, that way. And we, in our, to our surprise and to our thing, that when we found out that the case was not as or the son had explained to us, we told him that this is what it is. You should have seen the hurriness on his face. It was like, oh, is there anything that can happen? Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, will it something happen today? Will it happen tomorrow? And we were surprised to see that kind of eagerness on his face. It's not that the eagerness was not of a concern. The eagerness was more of a relief, if you will. And then he told us something which really struck me. Even today, that the scene of him telling me is still very vivid on my face. And it was me and my co-founder who were talking to him, because we were very concerned. This is my first patient,
Yeah.
right? And we didn't know what to do. And we were just looking at him and saying that he asked us, tomorrow morning or night, I have a flight to Frankfurt, and Lufthansa is the thing. It leaves at 11 o'clock or something like that. In those days, I think today also it leaves at around that same time. So I hope everything will get over by then and all that. And we said, like, look,
God.
we don't know. We're not doctors. Obviously, we started this company, but we're not doctors. But I told him that, look, my doctor feels it's not a good case, and something can happen. I hope you're okay. This is exactly what we asked. Are you okay? He said, yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. I only hope things just get on very fast and I can go back home. Home, matlab, he is an Indian German. I think he's got a German nationality, married to a German over there. And it so happened the next day the lady passed away, and he was constantly checking on, is she okay? Is she alive? Is she alive? This is exactly the words. Is she alive? And not as opposed to what somebody should be asking at that point in time. And when she actually passed out at about 4:45, 4:55, I think, around that time. And so we had this person who just passed away. It becomes a body, right? And this is third day now, third day of us starting a healthcare unit. And looking at each other, we don't know what to do, and suddenly we find a body in front of us. The doctor is, he's cool, and he said, you know what, she's passed away, let's do the other things and all that. So we immediately called his son and told him, you know what, mom passed. So he's leaving that day night. And he was like almost in joy. Ah, okay. So will you guys take care of all these things? And I just need to be cremated today. So I said, look, you know what, 6 p.m. is when the last time for booking, I think, and the cremations gets over here. So by then we had made all this inquiry as to how things happen, what is required and all that. You need Aadhaar and all this stuff. And we didn't, since it's the first patient, so we didn't take all the master data with us. And India, a lot of things can get done. So we spoke, we had some document proofs and all that. His eagerness was to just get it all done. immediately. And we said, don't you want to see her? Don't you want to just pray? Don't you want to do your
Yeah.
rituals?
Last
I mean, we have these
rites.
rituals,
Yeah, of
last rites,
course.
rituals, at least some pujas we do and all that. We call the priest
Say
to do
goodbye. I
say
mean,
goodbye
whatever
in the
is
right manner.
your
No, he didn't. He didn't.
understanding.
He
My
didn't. He
God.
didn't. Third day, mind you. I'm repeating the word third day. And then at about 7:30 or odd, we got the cremation done. We pulled some strings here and there. We explained the urgency, and we got it done.
He
And
wasn't there
7:30,
also.
no, no, no. 7:30, we pushed the body to the crematorium, and of course we were not there to. We can't go in and see what's happening over there. We respectfully moved aside, and we're waiting outside the crematorium. And this gentleman, just came in for that 5-10 minutes. He came, and that's when we handed over a small chit to him. We told him, your mom, when she passed away, she was holding a fist very tight, and we had to open it. And when we opened it, see, I'm getting goosebumps when I say this. And we opened it, and we found a small chit, and the chit has got a number and it's got a name. And he looked at it, and for a long time, and said, "Oh yeah, this is mom's broker. This is mom's stockbroker." Now imagine the lady who was dying had this chit in her hand, and I'm sure if she was in her complete senses, she would have wanted to give this to him and kiss him goodbye and tell him that, look, this is where the wealth is, or whatever I
All
have, take
wishes
it back.
accrued. Oh.
And I really don't know what happened to that, as it did it even take it. But then gentleman just flew away after that. I mean, that's it. And then we had the ashes, and my operations manager actually went to Sri Lanka Patna to get the emoji ashes. So that's my experience on the second and third day. And since then, Shutapa, I have seen enough. I've seen people, especially, I don't want to categorize them in any wrong manner, but I've seen this flight problem. I have a flight in the night problem too many times.
Seems very
I've had
convenient.
children come and ask me, can you take out the oxygen mask? And I tell them, look, dude, I don't run an euthanasia facility over here. I never do that. Those are things you get discharged from a center, you do whatever you want. But as long as that person is over here, even if you can't pay for it, that's fine. We will take care of it. Right? But we are not going to take away the oxygen just because you flight. I have had such conversations. I'm not saying everybody, by the way. I'm not talking about those one or two random cases that happens slightly more frequently. Slightly more
But
frequent.
that's why it's so important that as we talk about our seniors, and obviously this is terrible. I mean, this should not be happening in any civil society. Not definitely not by your own family. I mean, that is shocking, but it's also very
I pray
imperative.
not. I pray not.
Absolutely. I mean, I think of my own old age, and I keep thinking of the same things,
Yeah.
that it's very important to keep yourself as financially strong and
Yeah.
well planned right till the end,
Yeah.
so that you're never at the mercy
Yeah.
of anybody else
Yeah.
as much as possible.
Yeah.
So
No,
I
I just want to add one point over here, Shutapa. It's
yeah.
it's it's very true that you talked about, and I know a lot of people who have done a lot of good financial planning. Who have got multiple houses, it's given on rent and complexes, and having a good FD bank balance, shares, and all those stuff, investment in mutual funds and all that. But I have a different point to actually add over there. It's not about only the saving. It's also not about falling into the emotional trap. I don't know about Western countries, but here we have an emotional trap कि बेटा ने पूछ लिया उसको दे दो, इसने पूछ लिया उसको दे दो, अरे छोटा ने उसने गाड़ी पूछ लिया उसको गाड़ी लेके दे दो. So no, they spend all the savings into all these kind of things.
While they are
They
alive
also do
only.
reverse mortgage of their property as well.
Yeah.
I have seen this. And so financial discipline is extremely important in not just saving, but in also ensuring that it is used in the right manner. Right? You can't be an emotional at every point in time and just give it to your sons and your daughters or your grandchildren just because they ask you. So
Because people change.
that is where people change. I mean, there's a famous movie Bagban,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, of
What
course.
happened over there. I mean, that happens. That happens. Again, I just want the viewers to understand that this is not going to be 100% scenario.
True.
This is that 1%, 2%, 3%, or maybe even the 5%. I think 5% is a very big amount of
It is.
percentage. I hope you don't fall in the 5%. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying it's all gloom and doom. It's still happy out there, but please ensure you don't fall into the wrong 5% of things.
True.
Right.
True. So, a couple of things I want to discuss before we, go back to Sukino, because I do want to ask you some
Sure.
questions there. Um, Health insurance. I think that is
Big.
something which it's a huge potential. It's an area where seniors do get completely neglected. The
Big.
costs are too high. The premiums are too high. What is the gap here? Why aren't we able to support
See,
them?
insurance per se itself as a concept is really not taken off, if you really ask me. Not taken off in the sense that how many corporates, when I talk of corporates, don't think about the MNCs and the large Indian companies. I'm talking of the MSMEs, and I'm talking of the larger employers in India.
Right.
When I say larger employers, again, I'm talking about uh, pockets of employment given in large numbers. So those are the MSMEs, and those are those people, right? How many of them today have insurance for their employees? Okay, so if you see, insurance penetration itself is so damn low in India. Now you come to elders, you start taking your insurance at a certain age. The premium is really going to be exorbitantly high. Plus, today I think things are changing a lot more. Today you find a lot of insurance policies which can cover most illnesses from day one. But do you know that in about till there was some time back, you had to have a 3-year period till some illnesses were getting covered.
Correct.
That itself was a big drawback. They said, "Are ye nahi ho raha hai, to why should I do this right now?" And they postponed the decision. They postpone the decision. So we'll take it next year. We'll take it, and that next year is going to be really dangerous for you. So, I think a lot of awareness on insurance, a lot of benefits of insurance still not have been understood. People still feel. I mean, there is still this thinking that, you know what, at the chances of me using this particular insurance is like one in a whatever. When that is the case, then why can't I just save the little bit of money over there and not really put into insurance? The concept of mutual fund, the concept of insurance, I mean, where you're paying as a percentage of a total, that kind of a concept is still not caught in India. And elders are sadly, remember, who are the elders? These are people who are in the prime about 10, 20 years back or 15
Right.
years back, correct?
Yeah.
Now, at that point in time, what is the insurance penetration? Next to zero, right? So they're coming with the same mindset,
Right.
right? Now it's the people who are the 30, 40, 50 years of today who are going to be elders in about 20 years from now, who are at least covered to a large extent,
True.
to some extent.
True.
But you have those people who are currently 60, whose life expectancy is currently going to be, at about say 77, 80, 85. That is a huge bucket. And those people do not have insurance because they came from that no
Correct.
insurance mindset.
Yeah.
And now they're not going to get any insurance. Even if they get it, they're going to get at a high premium. So it's very difficult for them to kind of,
And companies will not look
but
be
there are
open to
certain
offer them.
companies, certain insurance companies and insurance policies which are for the elderly, but largely still, if you see, there's a mental block to explore. I mean,
From the
have you
corporate side, you're saying from the insurance
corporate side,
company
also
side.
from the family side? Have you actually gone to website and actually read the policy document to see whether you're covered or not? As I say, the fine print is so small that people don't even have the patience to kind of read it. So it's actually ignorance on the part of the families, and it's also lack of reach out from the insurance companies, policy makers, IRDA, if you will, to comprehensively make it mandatory for people to get insured at some level.
It's also expensive if you're doing it at a later stage in
It
life,
is.
right? I
It
mean,
is.
the premiums are
Any
very high.
contributory matters will always get tougher and expensive if it is towards a fag end. I mean, talk of fag end, not about a fag end of a life, but if you're crossed a substantial productive age, any contributory, right? I mean, mutual fund, for example, the benefits of that will come only if you start saving in mutual funds at a very young age. But if you start doing it at a much, much later age, the benefits you get is going to be very minimal. This is the thinking that people have. Oh, it's going to be very minimal. Then why do I need to do it? That's it. That's what it happens. And most people think that, okay, rather than insurance, let me buy a plot, let me buy a house.
Yeah.
Tomorrow something required, I can sell it and I can get it done.
Would you have any stats on how much of the senior citizen that we have population who are covered by insurance now?
No, I don't have the data with me, but I'm very sure it's going to be a very absolutely low figure. But I really don't have the data with me. Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about home healthcare, home care, and where do we stand in terms of home care? I know many of us, like I subscribe to an elder care service for my mother. I know few people who use it from time to time. But where are we at in terms of infrastructure? There's great potential, obviously, where business is concerned.
Yeah.
But where do we
Yeah.
stand?
Yeah. You see, um, I love this topic, so I can spend quite a bit of time talking about it. Home healthcare is currently in a very resource augmentative mode, which means that people who are playing the home care model think that you get XYZ kind of a labor. I'm using the word labor here from, say, um, states which are not so developed, and bring them over here, train them for 5 days, 10 days, 15 days, and deploy them, and that's home care. Correct? Somehow, as a society, we have started accepting that. That will change. I'm very sure that will change as technology, progresses, as people start becoming more and more aware of what home care is. This will all will change. Now, we're talking about last mile delivery of healthcare, and this is what home healthcare is all about. Mind you, if I talk about nursing, for example, just as a nursing, most, or rather all the nurses, if you see the education system, they're all taught to be subservient to doctors. I mean, you go to a hospital, no nurse will take any decision on their own. They will
Correct.
spot a problem, and the first thing they'll do is they'll run to the doctor to communicate the problem and say, you know what, doc, this happened, what do I do now? Right? So, I'm talking about a professionalized person over here. That is a nursing community over here.
Right.
So, they're depending upon the doctors for the guidance to address a particular situation. Now you're putting that kind of a person, similarly trained, educated person, nurse person, to the home of an individual,
Right.
expecting that person to play the role of a doctor as well, because that's a last mile delivery, right? Anything can go wrong. You need to take a proactive step, proactive wait, not to inform, but to take steps to ensure
Action. Right.
action, right? You want to take some preventive actions, preemptive actions, not preventive, preventive as well. Now, the point is, your training is all about relaying a matter to a doctor and waiting for the guidance, but you're asking that person to take an action now. Do you really think he'll be able to do it? That's the question. So there are very few people who can do it. A majority cannot. Okay, one of the reasons for the problems of healthcare, as I told you, resource augmentation as a problem, the nursing education as a problem,
Training of them.
training of them in handling adequately all the situations of a home based environment. Okay, fourth is the lack of devices or technology that is available with them to take care of it. Whom do I call? Whom do I relay the information to? What monitoring can I do on a proactive basis so I can communicate to that particular company, the home healthcare company, that this particular person is deteriorating and this person will need such and such care and all that. Lastly, I also in part blame the consumers, the people who avail home care. They tend to believe and they tend to bargain, and they have actually made this market extremely, if I can use a word, very suicidal, if you will, in the sense that um, the bargaining is so high, they feel that getting somebody at the home itself is enough. So when you bargain so badly, what happens is there will be overnight players who would like to play that market
Right.
because the entry barrier is lower, right? There's no cross check, no real licensing and all that, no real police checks on people who come there, no employment verification. So the entry barrier is very low. Now, entry barrier is lower. Demand is to keep to price that thing very lower because that's what the consumer is asking for. Whom do you get in your home? You really think you get quality?
No.
You will not get quality. So whom do you blame here for? So you as a consumer also will have to be aware of what are the minimum things required in a home healthcare setup, what kind of resources are required, and if you are aspiring for a good home healthcare company or a person to come and take care, be prepared to shell adequate amount. I'm not saying high amount, adequate amount. Pay some minimum compensation.
But
Don't
most
think.
people can't afford it.
Hey, you're right. You're right. Most people may or may not be able to afford the. If your expectations is too high on certain things, you may not be able to afford it. But there are multiple organizations that also make some homework do some homework as well. It's not that it's too expensive as well. There are people available today who can take care at a certain price point. There are certain models available in place in which you can do it. You can have a lot of telemedications available, so that
Right.
some doctors also, so even if you keep somebody at a very low compensation, then in that case also please ensure that you have some sort of a telemedication available for your parent, where somebody comes on the phone and just looks at you and talks to you and understands, and just do that doesn't cost much.
Right.
So it's a
Yeah.
combination of all these things that can make home healthcare a little bit more better, and not necessarily always look at the cheapest resource.
Correct. But it's a great potential area, right, for healthcare
Huge,
businesses.
huge, world over, not just in India, world over. You just spoke earlier about Japan, where the masses are aging very rapidly. You find Europe is aging, right? It's graying very fast. So I think the younger countries are still going to be obviously India, in some extent, to some large extent China for another 10, 15, 20 more years. So just imagine if China also starts graying, in that 2050 time frame. You will have a huge labor shortage world over. You will have a huge amount of people who are in that gray zone, and you have, so obviously you'll have a huge demand for home health care. Now you're talking about demand, there is going to be a massive demand in the world for. That's the reason today you find Indian educated nurses or trained healthcare people leaving for the better shows outside, whether it's Israel, whether it's America, whether it's Canada, whether it's New Zealand, whether it is Middle East. People living out because there's a huge demand for people out there, right?
Even though
So
we
home,
need them here as
we need them
well.
here as well.
Yeah.
But then the payment that they can do outside and the quality of life that any youngster would aspire, what they see in, for example, in a developed country compared to that what they see in India. So obviously people have a tendency to, the water always goes to the lower side.
Yeah.
So that way it's far more, the big bowl is over there, the feeding bowl is over there, so people tend to go there.
Also, when we look at overseas, of course, I mean, Norway, Sweden, Switzerland, Germany, Canada, US have the best elder care services in the sense that infrastructure
Yeah.
wise, pensions, healthcare systems, care
Yeah.
services, they have all of that.
Yeah.
UK has staggered care system
Yeah.
wherein at various stages of your life, you get more and more support from the government.
Yeah.
Right? If earlier maybe you need help with daily chores, then later on maybe you need complete home care, and then you have complete care homes as well. We are nowhere
No.
there,
No.
right? I mean, even the ones who can afford it are, few and far between, and the majority of the population can't even afford it from the handful companies that are offering it. So,
Correct.
how do we get there considering we are also
Yeah.
rapidly aging soon, right?
Correct. It's very interesting. You talked about the countries, and all of them are in Europe,
Yeah.
right? I mean, and this is just what I read about Europe sometime back. Europe outsources entire manufacturing to China. So, and they manufacture their entire defense to US, and they manufacture their entire. I mean, they outsource their entire energy needs to Russia, right? So they are all the time in the world and the money in the world to, to design the society for the elders and for themselves, which is great. I mean, no doubt about it. But then there are other problems in Europe, like what I told you, right? When you start outsourcing your security and your energy needs to another country, you know where you are, and you know that how China is now screwing them up
Right.
completely big time. Now, forget that. I'm just talking about Europe. So they have all better systems because they've put a lot of thought and effort into it. Whilst they did these things, they had all the time in the world and they did fantastically. Their welfare system is the best, if
Yeah.
you will. But is it a bone or a bane is something that remains to be seen. But currently, for the people who are enjoying those benefits, is definitely a good benchmark for all of us to kind of follow. Not to follow in exactly the footsteps that Europe did it. When somebody does a mistake, it's always a good thing to understand the outcome and
Correct.
understand the process as to how they did it, and then do it in a much more better way. We have always leapfrogged, right?
Yeah.
We didn't have a phone till about a couple of decades back, and today we are one of the largest players in those segments. So like that, we always leapfrog. Even here, I'm very sure the society will come together to kind of come up with policies, procedures, and I'm very sure if the current incumbent, the way the PM is talking about, that if he comes back, he will do X, Y, Z things, and one of his favorite things is for the welfare of the society. He's planning on insurance mass scale, for example. He's planning on a lot of yojanas which will also help the seniors. He's already bought the scheme for the Arogya scheme, where a lot of people have got benefit. The E-Sanjeevani scheme, if you're aware of it, I think a few million, I think in tens of millions of kind
Some
of
state
consulting.
governments are also have
Some
been doing
consulting
it
has
as
happened
well.
over there. When I say consulting, I'm talking teleconsulting happened over here. State governments will follow it because, especially if the center government is different and the state is different government, and there's a big
Bengal
competition to
government's
kind
already
of.
been giving
Bengal
insurance
has done it,
earlier.
and to some extent, I think Delhi has done it.
Delhi
So
has done
every
it.
government will try to do that as well, because ultimately you're competing for that eyeball of that particular voter,
Correct.
right? And what better way to capture the eyeball than actually showing something more perceptible to him, which is like either a finance or in healthcare, right? So we will come to that state. Now, will we blindly follow what Europe has done and come up with an 100% welfare state? I hope not, because there are dangers in that. But at the same time, I'm sure we can come up with ways and means in which our elders can be protected, our elders can be safeguarded, and our elders can be very well taken care of. So that system is not too far away, and I'm sure people are putting their heads together.
See, those who come from an underprivileged economic background, we are in any case a small group of taxpayers who are paying for
Correct.
much of the country's population and
Correct.
all of that, and whatever their needs are.
Correct.
That's the truth of it. What you mentioned earlier, ex-CFOs of companies and ex-CAs, and these are people who would have paid income tax all their
Yep.
life. Where is their return on income tax? I'm talking about people who have paid taxes. Like, say if I'm 70 and I know that for 50 years I've paid my taxes.
Yeah.
What benefit am I getting? So that group of people, if not for the entire population, see, massive amount of
Yeah.
number of people will be dependent on government schemes,
Yeah.
central, state, politicians, all of that. But people who have
Who are
paid
not
honestly,
used to having raised a hand to ask anything, and now
not used to handouts,
not used to handouts in any
but
manner.
may need it,
Yeah.
then how are we, how are we giving back?
Yeah,
That is
it's,
my
it's a
question.
great question. It's a great question because if you ask this question to a politician, he will immediately tell you what was told in the U.S. Right? I mean, you should not ask the government as to what the country has done for you. Rather, you ask yourself as to what have you done for the country, right?
Right.
So this is the most common dialogue that people will shower in your face as well when you ask this question. But your point is so valid. I mean, forget about for a minute about elders. You can ask the question to yourself as well. For the XYZ amount of taxes that you pay, ultimately there's no difference between you and anybody else on the road because you are also subject to the same potholes that he is onto. And you keep asking, oh, didn't I pay about
Pay for it.
this 20-30 lakh, depending upon what car you drive, but a minimum you spend about what 15 lakhs, which is about 40% or 50% of the car cost is given for the road, right? Road tax, and ultimately there's the same road that's not worthy of even walking, right? So if you take those kind of examples and come to health to elderly care now, and especially of elders who have actually contributed a lot in their prime to the development of the country, and today, yes, you're right. I mean, they've been given a very raw deal. You're talking about healthcare alone. Forget healthcare. I mean, what is it that we have done for them?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, today, thankfully, buildings are much more ergonomically designed and much more thoughtfully designed that they are able to get down there. But I remember my own mom, and I'll give you a personal story. And I'll tell you the station too. In Bangalore, there's a station called Carmelaram. If you have been there, it's on the Sarjapur Outer Ring Road, and we
Right.
use that station to go to Kerala, right?
Right.
And my mom used to go by the train. That station didn't have a platform till a few years back. It was a kacha platform. When I say kacha platform, the problem is the step of the railway bogie. It's at such a height, and my mom had a lot of difficulty in climbing and getting down because she had a bad knee.
Right.
She has also fallen on the railway track once. So you
God.
can imagine, and my mom during her prime also contributed in taxes and stuff like that. And I see when you go to the station, you find a lot of these kind of situations. Of
That's
course, when you go to a
unfair.
main
Yeah.
station today, you find lifts and you find escalators and all that, conveyors and all that. But otherwise, even today in most parts, the just a basic one I'm talking about, the height between the way the bogie steps are and the platform itself will tell you elders is not easy for elders. So
Yeah.
your question is very valid. Forget healthcare. As a society, I think we owe a lot to them, and it's not going to be extremely expensive at all. We have this notion
Yeah.
that to fix something it's going to be very expensive. Yes, of course, it's going to be expensive to fix anything for that matter. Repairing job is always the most expensive in the long run. But my point is, there are smaller, fewer steps that you can do to ensure that these people are taken care. For example, even since I talked of the railways, why can't we give a confirmed ticket to people who are more than 60, 65 years of age?
Correct.
Right now, you might think I'm discriminating on simply because of the age, but no, I'm not doing only that. I'm just saying that youngsters have a far higher tolerance limit
Yes.
compared to the elders, right? So why don't we give it to them, especially given the fact that how they contributed to our growth at some point in time. So we have a lot to think on these lines, and I'm glad that the governments of today, the bureaucracies of today, are actually cognizant of this matter and they seized of this matter. They're doing their best, but you know what? It is going to take a mega kind of an effort to kind
Yeah.
of even
And
make a
private
dent.
society and private companies rather would have to play a part.
We'll have to play a huge role. Most private people, most private entrepreneurs, I mean entrepreneurs in the private sector, always think about making the quick buck, and they somehow feel that making products for the elderly is not as lucrative as making products for the younger crowd, right? I mean, you will find baby foods, right? You have diamond dozen baby food, but how many can you even recollect by name for an elder? Right? How many can you?
None.
Now, when it comes to diaper, all of us know about diapers for the younger crowd. I mean, you all can name. You go to a pharmacy store, you can easily see that being displayed over there. But an elderly diaper. But I'm glad it's changing now, by the way, right? You still find one or two players out there in that kind of space. So
Right.
my point is, there is a huge commercial advantage in that segment. Look at housing, right? Look at housing. Today there are established companies, real estate companies saying that, look, this block is for elders, or this is a senior living facility.
Yeah.
It's getting compartmentalized and it's getting sold on that manner, and that shows that the society is now thinking that, what, it's not about making that 1 BHK 2 BHK only for the younger
Yeah.
crowd, but also you need to have an offering, similar offering in preferably the same compound, because it's also an attractive value proposition to have the children and the elderly
Elders.
stay, if not together, but at least stay in the same
Same in the
compound,
same. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
It's good you mentioned about senior living, because senior living is obviously coming up in a big way. Another area is assisted living,
Yeah.
right? And of course, there are elder homes as well, old age homes
Yeah.
as well, of a good grade and category. But there is a social taboo, right?
Yeah.
Especially where India is concerned, it's a bit of a cultural
Yeah.
thing. Even if we can't give the right care at home, going to even a continuum care facility for long term or even assisted living is still frowned upon.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, sadly, yes. I mean, even today, when people come to admit their dad and mom, and this is for those people who really need a methodical, a scientific way of taking care of them. This is not just by having somebody as a care compassionate healthcare assistant, but this is beyond that. I run that kind of facility, as you know. I run
Yeah.
a center which is for people who suffer from chronic ailments, people who have suffered, say, for example, stroke, or suffer from cancer, who need a good amount of recuperative and rehabilitative care.
Right.
It's a foregone conclusion that this kind of people will need a care given by companies like us. I know, on a weekly basis, if I say, there is at least that 5 or 10 people who come and say, नहीं but उन लोग क्या सोचेंगे, मामा जी क्या सोचेंगे, आंटी क्या बोलेंगी कि you're not able to take care of your dad and mom. But in this case, you can't. Let's accept it. You can't, because this particular your dad or mom requires an extensive amount of clinical care and
Yeah.
therapy care. You cannot provide it at home.
Yeah.
So that taboo, that what would people think if I place my dad and mom in your center, this is the language, in your center. And I said my center is not any other center, it's a hospital, right? It's
Yeah.
registered as a hospital. It's to be taking care of patients who require long term health care. For that they can get back to their to their walking ground, if you will. And so I find it very funny that people have this kind of a notion still. Yes, I understand that coming in to some extent when you're putting your dad and mom into a simple assisted living care of a thing, when especially when you're also saying the same city, I that is still understood, but not necessarily in
Someone
the
who
space
needs
that where I am
medical.
playing in, and especially where they need that healthcare management. Now, when it comes to assisted living, let me tell you, Shutapa, it's not that um, assisted living and putting your elders over there is necessarily a bad idea. I mean, ideally, if you all can stay in a joint family, nothing like it. But we know the difficulties of today. Finding a big, large house itself is a big problem, unlike earlier. And also, our own emotional needs have changed, right? There would have been a time when you would have shared that one piece of mango with 5 people, and you typically have seen mom having the seed,
Yeah.
putting that and eating that, and she would have been very happy at doing that. But today, people are demanding more than that. I'm just giving a simple example.
Correct.
Mango season hai, so we can imagine
Yeah.
correlate that kind of a situation. Today, everybody has got their own demands, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
again, thanks to technology, thanks to television and all that, people are demanding. They need the private space. And children today, everybody's on their phone, everybody's on their laptop, sad thing, but that's the way it is. Now, if somebody has to watch a TV, what do you call and some sort of a thing on
Show.
Netflix, somebody wants to see some sports, and today is all involving, right? Everything is
Right.
involving. Everybody is trying to get your eyeballs, and in that situation, where can you have more than 2 or 3 people in a particular apartment
Correct.
complex? So then having your elders who have their own needs. So in all this context, let me now tell you that it's not don't think emotionally it's going to be a very bad decision to place your dad and mom in a healthcare center, I mean in an assisted living center, because you know what, there are like-minded people out there,
They have a
both age
community of
wise. They have
like-minded
I'm coming
people.
to that, they have a community out there. So what you want to provide but you're unable to provide may for all the reasons be available over there. For all that your dad and mom will actually be happy over there because they're seeing similar kind of aged people. They have the stories to say. They have their old songs to sing and dance about. They will have their own evening time to spend
Socializing,
socializing and
adda
all
and
that.
all that.
It can
Yeah.
be playing those cards. It can be just making between each other playing a Sudoku game. So many things that they can do. It's just whiling a time between like-minded people. So it's not necessarily a bad idea. Remember, not a bad idea at all. And just to satisfy the ego of some mama, mommy, and all that, or what they feel and all that, don't take the wrong decision of keeping them in your home and subject to them this loneliness. The worst thing that can happen to you is that you're in the same home, but you don't even spend 2 minutes talking to your dad and mom. Right? That can be even more killing for them.
Yeah.
That can be more killing for them. The moment you enter your home, you are like so tired and your face is so sullen. Understandable. I know it's not a easy day these days for you, but then you having a very sulking face, sit down there, can be more depressive for your dad and mom. They'll be thinking that, "Oh, my beta, how smart you were, how lively you were, and look at you. What happened? Are you not happy?" No, you can't. I mean, that is going to kill them even more.
More, yeah, because they'll worry more
They'll
and
worry
they'll
more.
be
I'm a
depressed.
burden. I'm
Yeah,
a burden
yeah.
on my kids. You see, now she has to make food for us also. So, and she knows I don't like XYZ kind of food. So she'll have to make another food for me. All this is going to be depressing for them and killing them.
Right. Right.
Correct. So my larger point is, if you cannot take care in a more meaningful manner, it's okay. I mean, we understand that, but it's always better to explore like-minded communities for your parents to stay. For all that you know, they'll be much more healthier and better over there.
So coming to Sukino, you are a qualified chartered accountant. You've done a lot of work in the tech industry. What brought you to healthcare? Why did you start Sukino?
See, Sukino is my second venture. My first venture was way back in 1993. Again in the healthcare space.
Okay.
Actually, it goes back a little bit to my the way I am and who I am. You know, I mean, right from 17 and a half years, and I'm using the 17 and a half because I'm 6 months lower when it comes to the actual age and the age given the certificate. You know, my
Okay.
dad had put me 6 months ahead of my time. At that point in time, I was earning. I never wanted to depend on my dad and mom.
Wow.
For some strange reason, that was always in my mind that I have to be independent and I have to. And I wasn't, because I turned 18, but really say 17 and a half, I was, as I told you, I got enrolled as an LIC agent. I got enrolled as a member in Empire Finance and Integrated Finance. These are two companies based in Chennai, I think. And I was selling financial products for them.
Door to door.
I mean, in those days, of course. I mean,
Of
you
course.
days
How
in
else?
1990 and 88 and all, where did you have phones and all that? I mean, if you apply for a passport, 5 years or 6 years was a minimum waiting period. You apply for a telephone, it takes about 8 to 10 years. This is at that
Wow.
time. So door to door. I mean, your barber and your uncles and your aunties and everybody became your people who took your products.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, when you sell LIC policies, you make a handsome commission on that. So I used to get a good amount of money. And I did all my education through those things, and I was.
You paid for your own education.
Of course.
Wow.
Of course, not only for my education, but also for my clothing and everything. I don't know, man. Nothing that nothing against or nothing. No problem whatsoever in my family. But it's just that I always
Independent
thought on
minded.
those lines. I always thought on those lines. I want to be independent. I always wanted to have money in my pocket. I didn't want to ask my dad. Somehow it didn't never occurred to me that I need to ask him. So I always had about 100, 200 bucks in my pocket in those days. This is in 1980 and 1989, those kind of
Quite a
time
lot
frame.
of money at that
In
time.
those times, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, those are days when things could be bought for 1 rupee and 1.5 rupees and stuff like that. You still had 50 paisa, 20 paisa, and all those in circulations.
Of
If
course.
you've seen them.
Yeah, of course.
Now, so when I graduated, I wanted to go to Harvard. That was my dream, but I realized that I only had 15 years of education in BCom and not 16 years education. So I applied for all those institutions in those days in postal, writing
Right.
letters to them, and I got. I mean, all of them wrote back to me, and and that's how I knew that my 15 years education is not going to do any good. But because I was already working and spend my time mostly in non-academic matters, my academic was always kind of a scrape through, if you will, right? Not that I was bad at studying. I mean, I was one of those guys when I could just read once and I could just add a photographic memory. I could just go and
Wow.
write it.
Still have?
I yeah. I mean, largely I think
I
so.
might test you now.
Yeah, I mean, largely I would say. Of course, maybe age just caught up with me, but I love studying. So when I spent some time to read a book, I really read it and I really understood the intent behind it. I always look at the intent behind something. So coming to my this thing. So 93, here I was. no way to educate myself further. And dad was building a home in Kochi, and he wanted us, one of us, to go there and see this. And my brother was a gold medalist in programming, and so he was there and I was here. I mean, I could talk, and he was good in coding. And I we decided, okay, let's go and open a company. So we opened a company called Gressel Technologies in '93. And to get business, we moved around. Now I can use the word sector. In those days, we never had anything called sectors. We just moved around. So in Kochi, we had shipping, right?
Of course.
Exports in some way. Then we had advertising agencies. And then we saw hospitals and hotels. So we tried in each one as if we are domain experts, and I could speak, and I was the only guy who used to go out to them, not my brother. And somehow hospital clicked because
What
I
were you
went.
selling?
If I tell you now, it might sound a big thing, but in those days, if I have to tell you, it is kind of mini ERP. You know why? I'll tell you the pain point. What I identified with the pain point in hospital industry in those times, patients used to move around with chits, right? And leakage of revenue was very high, not deliberate, or sometimes deliberate as well, because you're moving around with chit. So go to the lab, you get your lab test done, and
Right.
you take that chit and you go. I mean, you there's no real control system over there.
Correct.
So in those days, we bought a control ID. If I tell you something, you will laugh, but it's called a patient ID, which is the most common thing that you find today in every damn thing. But in those days, we were, we were, we as if we found a very big thing. We told hospitals that by just putting an ID to this particular patient and routing it all through the dabbas, because nobody knew what are servers and what systems were. And then, mind you, this is a 286 and 386 and 486 time.
Long
If you
time.
see, if you
Yeah,
know the
yeah.
computer evolution, the floppy disk were so
Yeah.
the big ones. And so we use this patient ID as a control system to control, and then we got a lot of these orders, and that's how my foray actually got into. I got exposed to healthcare.
Okay.
Since then, if you're an entrepreneur, you'll always have that back of the
You
mind.
kept
Although I
the
went to
company, sold it. What did you all
I
do?
mean, I gave it to my brother and I went to do my chartered accountancy. I mean, he
Okay.
ran it successfully for many more years, and then he went to Ireland. So because the company was dying down, because there's no growth, to just service the same current set of people. So he went to Ireland, and I went to do my chartered accountancy in '95. I did in '98, got to I got headed into a Reliance and stuff like that. But as I say, you're always an entrepreneur even at that point in time. You're not actually, the thought of working with somebody always abhors you, right? And it used to abhor me as well. And always looking for the opportunity as to when I can. But remember going to Harvard, that thing is still mad. I want to go to US. I want to go to US. So I got a first opportunity to go abroad. Lasted by both hands. I went and joined Deutsche Bank in Singapore. Did that for a year and a half. Then I went to US and then came back. And then this bug was always there. To do something, to do something, to do something, because you just don't want to work. And
Right.
although the companies that I worked for always allowed me to work as an entrepreneur, and I was doing my own stuff over there, in the sense that under their broad guidelines. But when I had a chance to start my own company, I had two things. One is because of my little bit of exposure in IT, and given my background with chartered accountancy, something to do with fintech. But that's when the other aspect of healthcare, which is very close to yourself, was always looming, and
Right.
looming from two angles. One is the sector is looming. Secondly, my mom, all right, and she had this. She has about 9 surgeries to her. She had about 9 surgeries credit. She passed away last year in May itself. I mean, it's going to be 1 year now, and she was chronically ill. In fact, in her entire family, she was the longest serving female. Her two sisters passed away at 29 and 31. And she was the longest person who lived in her family. From a female perspective, and but she had almost all the issues that you think of, except for cancer. She had a pacemaker, she had a constant knee problem, hip problem, ortho problem, arthritis. I mean, you name it, spinal. And taking care of her, I realized that people like me who are in the corporate world and who have a need to take care of their elders in a slightly more involving manner, is going to find it very difficult at that point in time, simply because of the fact that we don't have support systems in place. And that's where a whole lot of things came together. It's like the ecosystem coming together when you want to do something together, So since I was working in Microsoft, I had this tagline of Microsoft, your trusted advisor. I was using a Microsoft that given me a corporate credit card, an American Express corporate credit card, which was a fantastic program. Especially if you have used it, you'll realize that whenever you call them, there's a lot of continuity in the discussions. If you have used them, they tell you, Mr. Menon, last time you had called me for this particular thing. Is it okay? Are you happy now? And what's the news? Are you facing something new? The discussion, it's not broken at any point in time, no matter when you call them for 6 to 8 months or 1 year also, they have the same thing to do. So
Right.
beautiful CRM system what they have. And as a CRM, the people, the human resources, and the system that captures this information. So now you have trusted advisor, now you have an American Express corporate credit card. My mom has a use case, and the domain knowledge that I had, because I was always in healthcare. you know India is still a Merawala doctor, right? And whether the gentleman has good knowledge or bad knowledge, whatever, people always ended up having about 5 to 6 pages of medications, prescriptions, and all those stuff. You put all these things together. The idea was, how do you make it easier for people to consume healthcare?
Right.
And again, thanks to Microsoft, because of my, the domain, being in IT, you are exposed to a lot of domains, and especially if you're a business guy in the IT department of Microsoft, you get exposed to a lot of domains, because that's where software is getting developed. A lot of partners are building technology, and partners building solutions on top of your technology, and that's how I got exposed to this transition care industry in US. And when I went and saw that, it was mind-boggling. I was like, wow. I told you about India being leapfrogging earlier. Similarly, I knew India will leapfrog even here as well. This is going to be a need over here, especially since our IT industry was doing very well, right? I mean, you have a lot of people earning big bucks who are all going on site. Parents are over here. So you paint that the opportunity over here. You need to have some sort of a transition care. So we started with the thought of starting in healthcare, but I had zero credibility, right? I mean, nobody knew that. I mean, why would anybody give for IT wala? We are all known IT walas, right? I mean, when you have a dangle, when you have a visitor, I mean, when you have the employee card, and you're all known as IT walas. So when I met one of the very famous healthcare hospital founder here, and I meant to meet him to seek some mentorship on how to go about it. The first thing in Canada he asked me is that, why the hell are you guys in my domain?
Domain.
And that meant that just solidified my thinking that, look, I have a zero credibility over here,
Correct.
right? To build credibility, I started something in home healthcare, and that's when the continuum of care, which incidentally was bought over by was included as part of a very mandate by JCI. As I told you, all these things come together around the same time. It all came together in 7 to 8 months time frame, if you will, and it made my pitch a little bit more stronger when I used to go and meet doctors. I talk to them about continuum of care, how US is doing, because you're able to talk these advancement. There are a lot of doctors in this city, at least I can tell you, and I mean every other city, who are either foreign, well-read, or who are going abroad every now and then, and are exposed to such kind of an environment. So they caught on to it.
Right.
And they realize that, look, this guy is talking something different. He's not talking about only asking for business, but he's talking about continuum of care. He's talking about, how do I continue the same treatment protocol. He is able to bring the case back to me, and not, I mean, so I have visibility on my patient. Most doctors need the visibility on their patients. They just can't lose it, right, in midway. So when you talk that language, they understood, they grasped it, and they encouraged that kind of a thinking, and that validated my story even further.
Right.
And when I got my first breakthrough with a few hospitals by way of MOU, that's when I solidified that thinking that, look, home healthcare, as I told you earlier, with all the deficiencies, can be addressed by having the doctors involved in this completely, right?
Which is
And
where Sukino is coming in right now.
absolutely. So Sukino, as such, if you see, it was a name that was proposed by my wife, who's also my co-founder. She said,
What does it mean, Sukino?
Om Loka Samasta Sukino Bhavantu. So if you see, it's a Sanskrit adage where the endeavor is to free the world from suffering, right? So I actually went and applied. So there's a story even here as well. When I went to apply, I actually asked for SUKHINO because that's what Sukino is all about. And my colleague, my erstwhile CA friend who did this company incorporation for me came and told me, "Hey, Rajnish, you know what? You're not getting Sukino, but you have Sukino, SUKINO." I said, actually, it sounds nice, and it's so simple, and it's also got a nice Chinese or Japanese slang
Yeah.
to it, so I can get some funding from this. Believe me, I told this, I can get some funding from the Chinese and Japanese. So let's go ahead and place this. So if you see the logo as well, it's a growth is life. Again, taking from you have enough examples and enough learnings in the world. You don't have to really scratch your head. By the way, let me tell you that, and this is for any wannabe and entrepreneurs. Look around, and you have enough stories. Growth is a way of life is a Reliance tagline. Just in case you didn't get it. So that's why our logo is
Yeah,
also
yeah.
all about the leaves,
Yeah, yeah.
how to give the life around it. So Sukino was born, started with home healthcare. Then the idea was always to set up the transition care I spoke about earlier. I told you about an example earlier, and we with the admission of a patient on the very second day, having addressed that pain point, whatever happened to that lady and whatever the son's expectations was a different thing. But that validated my viewpoint that there is a particular segment of people out there who need this kind of a care. And frankly, we haven't looked back since then. We have expanded. We have
Yeah,
close to
tell
about
us
eight
a
to
bit
nine
about your
centers.
expansion now. You're
So
in
we
many
have
other
we have about
cities and
five centers
states.
now, coming with another two more centers in only in Bangalore. So seven should be in Bangalore in a few months' time. We have one in Kochi, a big one, 121 bedded center. We are coming in Trivandrum. This month should be the opening for that. Coimbatore again. So we're expanding pretty. I will not say rapidly because I this is something that will be done very thoughtfully, right? This is last mile delivery of healthcare. You don't want to unnecessarily do something and then say sorry because ultimately it is involves the life of an individual. So I've always paced myself, and I will continue to pace myself in my growth. And thankfully, I've always got patient capital. It's very important
Very
to
important.
take care of patients. I've got patient capital. I've got people who believe in the story and to believe in the fact that India will need this model, not only now, but to a very large extent and in a more expansive extent in the years to come, right? So I got those kind of a growth mindset folks or people who have done such a things earlier, and thankfully because of the fact that they have built their companies, spending decades together, they were able to give me the time for me to build it together as well.
Correct.
And I'm happy that I've grown. I mean, we have grown so far close to 850 odd employees, can rapidly grow because we have kind of figured out the model completely. I think we have a very good understanding as to how the market is behaving and how the healthcare, what are the patients need, what do each constituents of the healthcare ecosystem with respect to Sukino kind of model need. We have figured that out pretty well. And I think our growth currently, what we have planned for, is a good spot to be in. And
Where do you see yourself 3 to 5 years from now?
so yeah, organically we definitely will be growing with more and more geographical cities being added to the tally, more and more beds to be added because ultimately our core is that, right? But on the other side, we will come up with newer offerings in new verticals, if you will. When I say new verticals, I'm talking about, say, for example, in the space of onco, in the space of ambulatory care, in the space of new models of care itself. It's
Right.
not necessarily home care. It's not necessarily only your continuum of care. There are multiple things for which, at this point in time, people are going to the hospitals, which you need not go to the hospitals. Not for everything, but there are those things which can be taken care in our center. We are always a neighborhood center, right? So growth can come both organic, slightly inorganic when it comes to such kind of an expansive thoughts, and of course really inorganic as well. I mean, there are a lot of good startups out there who got a very compelling value proposition when it comes to technology adoption, like AI, the way AI is used in therapy today.
So you might acquire. Look at acquisition.
Yes, eventually, yes. I mean, there are a lot of good companies out there where we're already using that technology, and who knows, we can come together and
Timeline for your first acquisition?
well, we're talking to a few people on that, and we're still under NDA on that
Or on the
front.
on the tech aspect?
On the tech aspect, but not necessarily only on the tech per se. It's about meaningful tech. See, tech is always an enabler. The moment you don't see tech as an enabler, that you're gonna have a problem. And I've been in the tech wheel for some time now, and I
Right.
understand this pretty well. That it's not tech for the sake of tech. It's
Hmm.
about how do you enable tech to make your daily lives easier, and those kind of techs, assisted living tech, if you will,
Right.
therapy, AI AI therapy tech. Those are important things to be done.
So let's come to your patients and try to understand that. What's the longest that a patient would have spent in your continuum care center?
Still now, they're still living. There are a lot of people who are still living, and these are people with geriatric care. These are people who have comorbidities. These are people who might have had rather, I think she had a stroke, but unable to do anything on their own. But they can go on this way, you
So
know,
they are long-term
very long term.
residents.
They've been with me now almost for 5.5 years now. That would be the longest. I think I still have about 5 or 6 people with me who've been staying with me for 5.5 years. And this is not assisted living, by the way.
Right.
These are people who are really sick. These are people who are um, who cannot do the daily chores, who need assistance with everything, whose vital imbalances happen very frequently, and whose some of the organs have given up in a way, in the sense that they're unable to walk, or they're unable to perform any activity, and some of them are also on tubes for feeding, some of them. And these are people who have put the tube about 2 to 3 years back, because
And these are things you can't do at
gradual
home.
deterioration. Sorry.
These are support. This is the support you can't give at home. It sounds
you
very.
cannot you cannot give at home for 2 3 reasons. One is, I mean, technically speaking, anything can be done at home, right? I mean, so to that extent, yes, you can set up a hospital in your home, but then the question comes that are you able to afford it, and do you have the privacy to and the
Trained
space
staff.
available to think, and plus, can you have the entire paraphernalia services that we offer in the home, right? So if you combine all this, it's a big no, right? For example, if you're having a doctor, a nurse, and a caregiver, and a therapy, also therapy at your home, you're going to spend about what, 15, 20, 25,000 rupees a day. You need a home in that manner, right? How many people do have that? They don't. Lastly, patients, patients themselves do not want to be in that situation. Obviously nobody wants to be in the situation, but the children also do not want their parents to be seen in such manner by their children.
Right.
Right. So that becomes a very compelling case as to how to admit them in a center like Sukino, where they can be taken care of at a reasonable cost, perhaps at one fourth, one fifth of the cost that they typically incur in a hospital, but which can guarantee them a very dignified thing and a long term care management for them.
What would be the costs like average costs? Would you say like a
See,
range?
a very deeply involving care, which means that you need some sort of two times at least of doctors coming and visiting you and touching you and auscultating you and finding out about who you are. I mean, with a doctor always around, then you have a 24/7 nursing always around, right? They come and check your vitals periodically, they come and check your all the other matters, and they're always around, as I say, just about um, an eye set away, for lack of a better word. Then having a caregiver in the room to take care of you, not only from a physical perspective but also from a mentally perspective. They're conversationalists. They start talking to you, and they make you at ease, just like your son or daughter would do.
Right.
Then your diet, right? And then your therapy sessions, then your psychological counseling, right? And then you have your F&B department. So all this put
And you're
together,
living, of
and
course.
you're living, of
So
course,
that
yeah, the lodging
cost.
and boarding,
Yeah.
whatever you say. All these things put across on an average comes to about 5,500 to 6,000 rupees, 6,200 rupees per day. Now, it's not much when you look at it from the fact that today a good hospital room of the same size in a good hospital will set you back by about 8 to 9,000 rupees only for the room. And then you get the nursing, then you get the doctor, then you get all these things together. If you typically see in a hospital bill, it comes to what, 18 to 25,000 rupees,
Yeah.
right? This
Minimum.
is, and then your therapy itself, one session will be 1,500 rupees if you do it out there. You add up all this, it comes easily about 25,000 rupees per day. So to that, when you say something, when you're competingly offering a home away from a home and a hospital away from a hospital, the midway between home and hospital, and you're providing all the entire paraphernalia services over there for about 5 to 5.5 to 6,000 rupees. I think most families are very accommodative, especially to take care of that particular critical moment of somebody,
Right.
and then get them back on feet. So it's a 2 to 3 month kind of a journey that they plan for. So there are milestones that they plan for, and those milestones typically get achieved in about a month, 2 months, 3 months. So you imagine if that was spent in a hospital, especially in a scenario when you don't have insurance,
Yeah. Oh,
or when your insurance is completely exhausted,
correct.
because
Yeah.
of your acute intervention in the hospital that you've done. So this becomes like a boon for them, right?
Absolutely.
And so that's where we have been able to help our society.
So, when it comes to seniors, any success stories that you really, I'm sure you have many, but any that you would like to tell us about?
Multiple. But I mean, I fondly remember a lot of cases in the cancer space, because it's all about overcoming cancer or defeating cancer, right? It's about getting the quality of life back,
Yeah.
right? I know of multiple people who stayed with me, who had a. I mean, once you discover, once you find you have a cancer, I mean, it's a downhill, unfortunately, because you always ask the first question is, why me? Right? I mean, it's a very valid question. Why me? What did I do wrong? What is it I ate wrong? What is it? My lifestyle is so damn good, and what happened to this? I know multiple cases in that space, at least, where people who have sought a support pre chemo, during chemo, post chemo, who came in a very bad, debilitating state, and then they walk back in a very healthy manner, and they're still living very well,
Wow.
right? And they still call me, and whenever they go for checkups and all that, they make it a point to come via this center so that they can meet all of us and spend some time with us. Those are real, where I really feel good about it. And then I can't tell you about the stroke cases. I think we have done a few thousand, if you will. I mean, if I that's not a big number, I think, because yeah, I mean, I think we have done a few thousand success
Wow.
stories on stroke. I mean, these are patients who have completely lost their ability to walk, to even swallow, right? I mean, these are all typical problems. We take all this for granted, but you have no idea that there are people who have lost the art of swallowing, who don't know how to swallow, because they've lost their ability to, the brain has lost the function because of the stroke that they had. And then training them, teaching them. It's To me, when I look at therapy, it's almost like what your dad and mom has done to you when you're young, make you walk 10 times. So the 11th step or 11th time you walk, and you walk with a lot of poise and confidence, right? So this is what exactly happens even in a person who has had stroke and who's lost his mobility.
Teaching
You make
them
him
again,
walk, teaching
learning
them
again,
again. You're
basically.
rewiring the brain. You're rewiring the brain. You're telling the brain, you know what? And the brain is also a fantastic organ, if you have understood. And if, I mean, a lot of research is going on. I don't think anybody's ever understood any part of the brain. But then, whatever little bit we know that it's a very fast learning organ, and it does set up multiple pathways.
Right.
If one is dead and gone, it's try to set up other
Yeah.
pathways, and the other pathways need to be strengthened. So when you start keeping strengthening other pathways, what happens is that you start regaining your balance, your standing balance. So in the case of stroke, which we are very well known for, there are hundreds and thousands of cases that I can't really think of. But all these faces come to me. The names may not be very the same, but the
Right.
names come to me. But the face come to me, because I know how they came in. Completely in a stretcher, and when they go back in the car, sitting very nicely, confidently in the back seat of a sedan. I'm using the word sedan because sedan, when you sit inside, it's low down.
Yeah.
You need to sit very carefully. When somebody has come in this stage and he goes in that stage, you can imagine your joy, and that's something that makes your life very fulfilling.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. So last segment, some quick questions that I'd love to ask you. What would you say would be the five most critical needs of senior citizens today in India?
Financial security is definitely one. Okay. That's definitely one particular area that they can look into. Healthcare is secondly. Now, when I talk of healthcare, I'm talking about access to healthcare. Okay, forget about their own healthcare for a moment. That's going to be the third element for me. Being fitter, right? Being sharper, mentally and physically. That is something that's a third element to me. Fourth is support systems, right? If you have not found out the support system available in your city, do it now. Do it now. And if you have not figured it out, then take the professional help of people and try to understand where you want to be should something go wrong,
Right.
right? Fifth one, have a will. Please have a will, because most people take it for granted. You have no idea what a mess it's going to make for yourself as well, right? So these are the five things that I think um, elders should definitely take care.
Right. What are the five things you would say that they should never do, and five things that they should do every day?
What they should never do at a certain age, and obviously they should not spend their time thinking that they are old and sit in a corner. Sitting is the next form of cancer. Enough has been said about it now, right? And people are realizing that it's a bad thing
Or
to
lying
do.
down.
Or lying down. Yeah, either way, but both way. Being immobile, feigning tiredness when you're actually not, and trying to gain sympathy. These are things which one should never do. Even if you have a small pain, unless you have a real nagging pain which you need to definitely to go check with the doctor. But sometimes most of the pain is here,
In the mind.
not here. Right? So you need to get mobile, get going out there. Right? So this is second thing I would say, please never do it. Third is, do not believe in each and everything that you see. Ultimately sometimes you need to also be a bit more cautious, whether it is with a
Cautious.
loved one or whether it is with your whatever neighbors or your domestic chores or whatever it is, domestic helps or whatever it is. So that is the third thing if you ask me. Fourth is, eat little and spend more physically, right? People have an habit, they think that, oh, okay, when will I eat now? If I don't eat now, when will I eat now? That's a common thing they get into. And they have this huge thing, they think that they can control everything with medications. They're like eating on one hand, on the second side they have all the medications other, it's not going to help you at all. So these are the few things which I would say, please don't do it, right?
And few things that they should do every day.
They should every day socialize. Believe me, socialize. Be active and socialize. That's the most important thing that one can always do. Have a walk in the park. Go for a walk in the park. Meet like-minded people. See, it's very easy to get bogged down when you go for walks as well. I mean, you typically have a tendency to come to sob stories. Don't get attracted to it. I mean, you on the rather you cheer the other gentleman also up or the other lady also up. So I would say, go for a walk, be mobile, be active, socialize more in a manner where you're not going to end up brooding about their situations when you come back home. Rather, you should feel that, look, I have done this. Join some organization. If nothing, join a religious organization or spiritual organization. If nothing, at
That
least
really
join that. At
helps,
least you
yes.
do some bhajans. You have with 10 people. You start bowing a body. You start chanting, loudly and all that. At least your lungs will get some exercise, right? Other than you sitting down and then brooding over seeing a serial. So these are the few things that you should definitely do for it. Make your own food. It can be simple food at that point in time, and that's enough for you, right? You don't have to make elaborate food every day. Make it simple. So keeping yourself active is
Active.
extremely important.
That's what I'm
Lastly,
hearing the
let me tell
best.
you, financial side of things. I hope you have saved. If you have not saved, and if there are any means of revenue that you're going to get, at least try to save from that, right? And if you've done some smart investments, well and good. If you've not done any smart investments, and if you have the wherewithal to do some investment at that point in time, be active in that space as well, and if you don't have an insurance, please take an insurance depending upon your age. Don't think, oh, I'm already 61, will I get it? No. Imagine if you don't have at 61, what's going to happen at 80, right? Don't give up, right? For all that you may live till 100, and then that 60 to 100 is still 40 years away, right? So these are the few things which you should do.
So, um, a young person today, few things that they should do, considering that we are all going to be by 2050, many of us will be senior citizens. what should they do today to plan for the old age?
I think we should start accepting that we'll grow old.
Hmm.
That's the first thing.
Acceptance. Yeah.
Except you're going to get old. I mean, it's good. I mean, you can show your muscles, your fit body, and you can able to run, and you're able to gulp about 3 to 4 beers in one shot. All this is fine. I mean, that's all. That's a nice the other way of the youthfulness. But also think about it that one day you'll grow old. Accept it. When you start accepting it, you start also spending, one part of that Sunday morning to do a few things, which is check on all your investments. I mean, there are some people who check every day and every now and then, but that's also too bad. But at least check on, put some timeline to it to check if you have the right investments. Talk to your if you don't have a financial advisor, and if you can afford one, get a financial advisor. At least, and financial advisors, not people. Don't think that you need to spend some crores or some lakhs or 10 thousands. No, you don't. You can get people at a very reasonable amount who can advise you, depending upon your budgets as well. So spend some time on doing such things. So creating a financial net is very important. Mind you, at a certain age, suddenly you realize that, oh, you know what, I don't have money. That can kill you even more badly than anything else, because emotionally that's going to put you in a very unstable position, right? So creating a safety net, one of the acceptance that you're going to grow old at, if not immediate, but in some point in time, having a safety net, a financial safety net for that is the most important thing. Thirdly, even more important is to come up with a good amount of friends and family members who will also think on those lines.
Right.
If you don't have a setup around you which is thinking on those lines, you might get influenced to just drift away your life,
Right.
doing nothing. This is what we commonly see in youngsters today. So surround yourself with like-minded people. Fourth is, as you start preparing for your old age, mind you, you never know how your old age is going to be. I mean, hopefully it's all going to be very, very healthy. But otherwise, spend some time to also enjoy your current life. And enjoy doesn't mean, go to a bar or go to a place of hanging around every now and then. Explore the world, meet more people, do more things which you always wanted to do when you're in college and when you're in those times, and enjoy your life and don't give any regrets for that. So these are 4 5 things which I would definitely do.
And health and fitness?
Absolutely. I presume that would be the denominator for any conversations, because, in these days, if you're not going to be, and health and fitness doesn't mean you have to join a gym. Most people always think that a gym join karna padega. No, you don't have to. You don't have to. I mean, if you're able to walk 15 20 minutes, and again, walking doesn't mean you always walk in an exercise mode or gear. Even if you're mobile from your home to office, if you can, or at some point in time, and spend 20 25 minutes of your day, being spending some time on your fitness, buy a small dumbbell of 5 kilos
Yeah.
and then do it for 15 20 minutes. And of course, there are enough tutorials available. If at all you can, you join a gym just to learn the basics and start doing it at home.
Correct.
Right? Do some yoga. Again, you need to have that 1 month of that proper yoga training. Don't go to a quack to learn yoga. Do it in a proper manner. Spend some time to do that. So for me, that is a denominator. I don't even have to tell you that. Healthy food too, right? I mean, what is healthy is depending upon your own body. There is largely an accepted amount of healthy foods available out there, but it's also otherwise dependent upon your body as well. I mean, you have seen umpteen number of cases where people eat only non-veg, and there are people who don't eat non-veg at all and end up falling sick. So there's no real fine line as to what works for you will work for me and stuff
Clean
like that.
food, healthy food,
Clean,
would be
healthy
best.
hygiene
Yeah.
habits, all this is going to play a big role. As far as possible, please don't spend your time even once and think about smoking. Those are really bad stuff to do. And even if you're drinking, having a good responsibly, being having a drink is okay. But every day, day in and day out, hanging out with friends with a few pegs is not a good idea at all.
Yeah.
And there are some foods which people in the society have now started believing and also propagating that this is really bad. Think that it is really bad and avoid them. I mean, for me, that is a denominator, if you will. That's why I didn't even.
And last question, you also mentioned this earlier. Some tips for entrepreneurs.
Well, stay grounded. Don't read magazines to only get swayed away by what the other guy has got it. There is always this valuation game.
Game.
You know, I think one should be content with what they're doing. Success doesn't come immediately, and just because somebody is raised to go down money, it doesn't mean he's successful. Successfulness of your product will only come if there's a good, meaningful adoption by your customers. And to that extent, it's very important that you understand who your customer is and you understood your customers, right? So an entrepreneur should be grounded to that effect and not get swayed unnecessarily by what's happening. I mean, a lot of people are there who have raised 10 times their valuation and you're able to raise two. I don't think those are important things. End of the day, it all evens out.
Yeah.
It evens out. I'm telling you, it evens out. Of course, it will only even out if you play the game in a more meaningful manner, in a better manner, right? I mean, simple examples. You look at a cricket player and you think, wow, what a great life he's got. Yeah, the guy's got a great life, but did you know that he's woken up every day at 4:30 in the morning, did it
For
so
years.
strenuously, years, not even years. I mean, somebody like Sachin, for example, for decades, right?
Decades, yeah.
So that discipline is something people don't see it. People always talk about the most famous industrialist family of India, which is always called out. They have this. They have, of course, they have it. But do you know how he has maintained that? Maintaining growth is the most difficult thing, right? Entrepreneurs should always understand that. First of all, having meaningful growth means that you understand your customer very well, you understand your markets very well, and you're being true and honest to your business, right? If you're able to do that, then you'll see some growth. Then the question comes, how are you going to maintain that growth? Now, what worked here to start off will not help you alone in maintaining that. You got to go beyond it. There's a lot of fiscal discipline required, financial discipline required within yourself as to how you don't splurge things and how you don't do things just because you've raised a certain round, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you typically find people going and buying a Mercedes Benz or a BMW just because they raised a round of fund. A round of fund is nothing but a most expensive round of capital that you've raised. People don't realize that. So my advice to entrepreneurs is, in all this, what comes across is stay grounded, be grounded. And when I say be grounded, what I'm talking about is have your ears to the ground as well. Listen to what the market is talking to and telling you, right?
And
To
what your
me,
customers are
what
telling you as
obviously,
well.
when the
Yeah.
ground means customers are telling you, your investors are telling you, don't get swayed. That's the worst thing that can happen to entrepreneurs. Today, a lot of people are failing only because either they have raised a round too early, they peak too early in their fundraising, or they've not done at an appropriate period of time, and then now they are, crying house about the fact that they couldn't raise the money at that point in time. The best form of money raise that you can do is actually the money that you get as revenue from your customers. Mind you, if you're able to make a profitable company, whatever profit may be, if you are able to see the EBITDA on your unit, and if your unit economics is going to be, so this is where you need to spend your time. Unit economics, most people don't see that. They come up with this fancy thing called adjusted EBITDA and all this. So when these new terms are only killing, if you ask me, and I'm an old fashioned chartered accountant, I still want to see, the numbers 100 minus X will come to a positive number. Ultimately, cash flows is the ultimate truth. You cannot escape from that particular statement. So, all entrepreneurs, look for a cash flow statement. If it's going to be positive, well and good. If it is positive, try to make it robust and try to make it more predictable. So these are some of the few advices I would like to give.
Thank you so much on that note.
Pleasure.
Thanks again for joining us on What India Needs podcast. And I think we learned quite a lot about your industry, senior citizens, and a lot more in between. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much for having me, Shutapa. It was really nice talking to you, fun talking to you, fun to remember the past, and it's been a great journey so far. And I'm very happy that I could at least come and share a few snippets of my past with you all.
Thank you so
Thanks
much.
for having me.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us today on What India Needs podcast. Do like, share, and subscribe to our channel. If you have any feedback, leave it in the comments below. Thank you and goodbye.